Yes, welcome to the No State Project here on LRN.FM, the Liberty Radio Network. It is April 28th, 2018, live in San Bernardino, California. Glad to be with you. I am streaming on my YouTube channel, and you're going to notice a few things. Yes, I'm not in the home studio, and man, the steps that I take to do some sound dampening really helps, as you're going to notice in this show, because we don't have that. But I'm not going to worry about the stream on YouTube not being in HD. Everybody knows what I look like. It's not a big deal, but it's just so that people can listen to the big show, which is got a lot of stuff to get to today. I mean, it's been one of them damn weeks. I mentioned briefly broadcast about the IRS, and it got even worse. So I'll discuss that. And I have a new feature for the No State Project that I think you all are going to be pretty excited about. I know I'm having fun doing it. And so I'll see what I can do about getting that either in this segment, or we'll have it in next segment. And maybe we'll play it a few times. It's a 2-minute call, so it's not like we're going to miss anything by playing it a few times. Some people may miss it. I want to thank, of course, for the continued support, and that this show is again brought to you by the benevolence of Bill and Dan in New Hampshire. Of course, I do appreciate that. If you want to help support the big broadcast, you can do so at markstevens.net. You can use my sales account or PayPal. I do appreciate that. People say, well, why don't you do Patreon? Because you got to use tax documents. So, no, not going to do that. I do need to announce, I have to actually tell them at Libertopia. The Libertopia guys, I am completely flat out broke. I am totally unable to get to San Diego next week, even if I could pay for the gas that has gone up 7 weeks. I have no money for lodging, so not going to happen. I'm not going to be able to do the jam. But I will be getting out to Oceanside, because I am in California fairly often. So at least we'll be able to get to the Living Tea Brewing Company in Oceanside soon, and maybe regularly, and do the show there once a month or so, and get to do and play some blues. We were going to do it this time, but again, it's unfortunate I'm not able to do that. I do appreciate the support that we do get for the show. I'm not going to go through and name everybody, but I do appreciate that. It's more. If you do want to join me on the big broadcast, it is 218-632-9399, 218-632-9399. And if you instant message me, you can get on the show during a break on Skype, and you can Skype Frank Rizzo 3, and we'll bring you up on that. I want to get to a forum comment, and this is left by Ripsaw. Juan Galt as dissent guest. He says, I just have one question for Mark. When Juan stated that the ticket was prima facie evidence, why in the hell didn't you say the ticket is a mere allegation, fella? He then put his coveted Supreme Court rulings that state that on the screen for him to debunk. Well, he didn't just say that the ticket was the prima facie evidence. He said that what was on the ticket, the facts as alleged, meaning my physical location in Arizona and whatever happened at the stop, that if there was a slight chance that those facts supported the allegation, then a prima facie case was met, and that would create a rebuttable presumption. So TR1 said down here, I really enjoyed listening to the show. I was even more fascinated by Juan Galt's insistence on the show and in his YouTube video, which I haven't seen, that even the slightest possibility of the claim being true would be enough to meet the prima facie requirement. I'd love to hear them discuss this one single issue alone in more detail in future without the diversion of other issues being part of the general discussion. I think sticking to this subject alone without going off on tangents would have been really interesting. Well, I actually tried to do that. And again, like I apologized on the Wednesday show, I fell for his stupid lawyer trick. If it was deliberate, and if it was just a matter of arrogance and unprofessionalism that he was interrupting me so much, then okay, then it wasn't a stupid lawyer trick. I did discuss the issue of the slightest possibility a number of times, and that's why I kept on pushing him to answer directly the question: is there any chance? Is it even within the slightest possibility that my physical presence in California or Arizona proves the Constitution applies? And he says it doesn't. Now he tried to go back on that and try to claim that might makes right, that jurisdiction is force. And again, like I mentioned on the show on Wednesday, yes, jurisdiction is force as authorized by the Constitution. So how is the Constitution applicable to then use that force authorized by the Constitution? And the citations that I've given, I'm not going to go through all the state ones, but as far as a citation, let's say the federal Constitution, you have Article 3, that says all judicial power herein granted. And so if they're exercising judicial power, if it's jurisdiction, then of course it's coming from the Constitution. He then got caught up in a circular argument, and of course he's going to disagree. I mean, obviously the guy's going to disagree. He just had his ass handed to him, so he has to try to. He has to know that. Even by his own admission, there's not even the slightest possibility that my physical presence in Arizona proves the code applies. Not even the slightest possibility. Therefore, there's absolutely no creation of a rebuttable presumption. It doesn't happen. So that's why he had to defend against that, to continue with his narrative that I'm wrong. He had to go into a circular argument that jurisdiction and the applicability of the Constitution is by force, therefore trying to argue that the force is what makes the Constitution apply. And it doesn't work that way. Might doesn't make right. So no matter how much this lawyer wants to believe that might makes right, that doesn't wash. My putting a gun to Juan Gold's head and saying that this piece of paper gives me a right to take your property, I have jurisdiction to do that. No, the piece of paper is just public relations trying to cover up the fact that I have a gun against his head. So might doesn't make right, and you can claim that all you want, but that's not going to make it true. Somebody did point out, and I have not verified the citation. I'll have to do that. I should have done that before I started the big broadcast. But it's supposed to be the Supreme Court saying the moral law is the foundation of the common law, which is the foundation of the body of statute law. So that's supposed to be United States versus Sanchez, 144 U.S., page 310. I don't know. I have to see that because he's saying that you can't make moral arguments. And again, this is what gets down to the slightest possibility here that one is correct on, but he's not correct that there's even the slightest possibility that the claim is true that just because I'm physically in Arizona, the Constitution. But there is no possibility. It is absolutely impossible. It is not logically or rationally possible. The one just doesn't lead to the other. And you can talk about inductive reasoning all you want. That does not follow. And even he said it doesn't. So getting to, because it's immoral what they're doing, grossly immoral and demonstrably so that it is immoral, that is why there's no possibility whatsoever that they can support their claim that their rules apply to us. There's just absolutely no possibility that my physical location proves a written instrument no one bothered to sign actually applies to me. And that is why Juan Galt is ultimately wrong when he says that I am a pseudo lawyer peddling misinformation. And that is why he doesn't he couldn't do it on the show other than to argue might is right. Sorry, but rational people, we don't accept this might is right crap. And you would think as an anarchist, you would know better than to try to push the issue as if might does make right. I will get to the new feature of the new state, on the new No State Project when we get back. If you want to join me after that, it's 218-632-9399, 218-632-9399. The passcode is 2020 with the pound sign. Yes, welcome back to the No State Project. Gosh, I can't stand headphones. You tuned into the No State Project Live. 3 hours of anarchy radio right here from the Fortified Compound in San Bernardino, California, where you can get gas at over $4 a gallon now. So I thought Arizona was bad. So yesterday I fill up in Quartzsite, and it's $2.79 a gallon, which is a full 50 cents more in just a few weeks. But then once you cross that there Colorado, holy crap. I saw one today here at $4.25. $4.25. Ugh, sick. This is why I drive straight from San Bernardino to Quartzsite, and I don't get gas in California. I get stuck here. Well, welcome back to the big broadcast. You want to join me on the show today? It is 218-632-9399. 218-632-9399. Before I get to the new feature, I hope I addressed the issue of the slightest possibility. So for those just tuning in, to get a presumption of correctness, you have to have some facts that, if true, that there's even the slightest possibility that it will prove the claim. So if the claim is that the laws apply to me, and the only facts that they have to support that is my physical location, and that's the basis, even if you're a resident, if you're a citizen, anything that they claim is, that's what territorial jurisdiction or personam jurisdiction is. If you're physically here, our rules apply to you. If there's even the slightest possibility that your physical location proves that the Constitution applies, even the slightest, I'll give you, it's a very low threshold here. It's not beyond a reasonable doubt. That's at trial. The slightest possibility. Then there's a rebuttable presumption. But what one doesn't get is, in practice, I would even be happy if it was a rebuttable presumption. And because rebuttable means that I can actually defend against it. But this is a sacred cow. And they don't allow you to challenge that. They will even go so far as to say that the prosecution doesn't have to have evidence. Well, if they can make a claim without evidence, that's not a rebuttable presumption. That is an irrefutable speculation. Absolutely irrefutable. So it's grossly unfair. So in practice, it is taken as an irrefutable from the hand of Odin himself. If you're physically here, the laws apply. End of discussion. You're done. End of no evidence needed. Baba Fangul. That's what I say to that. So somebody, all right, before, I guess this kind of goes in. They were asking about injunctions. I don't know in what particular context they were talking about. But an injunction is basically an order from a court to an agency or an officer not to proceed. And we're working with somebody, JT's reporting to me about what's happening, just brutal in armed robbery in Minnesota, Minneapolis area. And basically, like I mentioned the other day, because things were worse, the agent was on the stand. The agent filed for a jeopardy assessment to raid somebody's house. So they actually raided the guy's house later that day after court without telling him. He had to file an affidavit to support the petition for the raid. Now imagine 10 to 12 armed men coming to your home unannounced, barging in, guns drawn, and actually with a gun out, telling you, open the safe now. The judge, Susan Richard Nelson, allowed this to happen and knew that they had filed for the jeopardy assessment, and he was in court for books and records. And they announced the case number for the books and records, but not the petition for the jeopardy assessment. They actually had the witness get on the stand, the IRS agent, some real piece of filth named Richard Wallen. I've actually spoken to this criminal. He's as bad as they come. Has absolutely no problem lying through his disgusting teeth to get what he wants. He is a thug. He is a criminal. He works for a terrorist organization called the Internal Revenue Service. And he filed an affidavit. So he made legal conclusions or allegations under oath, got on the stand. And so the defendant, the victim in all this, had no idea that they were planning to raid his house later that day. So you have a failure to disclose, even if we give him a pass on that. He's asking questions regarding the allegations the agent has made already, the legal claims he's made. You're a taxpayer. You're within my jurisdiction. I have jurisdiction to do this. The law applies and gives me a moral right to do this. All those. On cross-examination, the criminal, Susan Richard Nelson, who, if you see her pictures, is got to be a smoker, something to explain those disgusting rotting teeth. Here's an objection. So when the question is asked for evidence to support these legal claims that he's made, or these legal allegations, if you want to split that hair, if you're some, douche lawyer, the claims that were made in the affidavit, the prosecutor, the U.S. attorney, objects, says it calls for a legal conclusion. The witness is not competent to testify. He's not able to not qualified to make legal determinations or legal allegations. Dutifully licking the U.S. attorney's ass, Susan Richard Nelson sustains the objection that the witness is not qualified to make legal allegations or legal claims. All the while knowing that this piece of filth, this thug, had filed an affidavit which is under oath. It's testimony, no different really than when he's on the stand where he was at the moment. And despite a motion to strike from the record his legal opinions he wasn't qualified to make, Susan Nelson dutifully denied and allowed a raid to be conducted where the point man was legally incompetent to have done that. So that's what happened. And so they raided the guy's house, terrorized his family, traumatized this family, and with guns drawn. So you say taxation is theft, it's armed robbery. With guns drawn, open the safe. Open the safe. So let me explain again why I call the IRS a terrorist organization. When you use violence to bring about political gain, political change, that is the definition of a terrorist. And that is what the United States government, all governments do. All governments are terrorist criminal organizations. All right. You want to join me on the big broadcast, you can do so at 218-632-9399. I promise in the next segment, I will be debuting a new feature here on the No State Project, and you're going to like it. This is a good one. I had a lot of fun with this one. So we'll be back in just a moment, so don't go away. Yes, welcome back to the No State Project right here on LRN.FM and streaming live on my YouTube channel. I'm really surprised I'm able to do that. I was just saying in the chat that my internet at home is 10 times faster than this. This is really not very good internet service out here. And wow, to improve this in California, everything is so much more expensive. You know, your loaf of bread is like $4. Oh, it makes me really, really enjoy Phoenix. Why I like living out in the Phoenix Valley in Arizona. A lot of other reasons, but now I can go down to the store and like going down here on you go to 40th Street and Waterman. Not good. Most nights you hear gunshots. So anyway, I have the video already up, and I got it loaded yesterday. I gotta just do the final touches as far as the publishing of the video of this. It's the new feature here on the No State Project, and I think this is going to get a lot of traction. It's Anarchist versus a Statist, and basically what I want to do is confront on a regular basis, do this as often as time permits, to be able to call bureaucrats and be able to put them on the spot regarding the moral basis on which they operate. Now, they think that they're the good guys. These animals, Richard Wallen and Susan Richard Nelson, Jeffrey Wagner, you fat, disgusting, take a bath for once. Just once in a while, Jeffrey, take a bath. I believe when I was up there in his office, it was choking me. It was just so foul. Well, I know. I'm sorry. I lost. But to bring the moral, they think they're the good guys, and so to confront them with that, to try to put them on the spot, to try to actually prove that, and so this first installation that we have of Anarchist versus Statist, it's with a tax agent, and boy, this is good. This was good. A little bit. It's a little bit. It's only 2 minutes long, so it's not that long. Oh, this is good. So this is going to give you an idea how these things are going to go. And I'll get this actual, the good audio and video is actually going to be published, within an hour or two after the big show here today. So here we go. The only other question I guess I would ask lines like, look, if I was to operate in the same manner as your organization, the state government, and I forced strangers to give me money, would you consider me a criminal?
Good one. Anything else, sir?
Just a yes or no. Yeah.
All right. And obviously, I'm not going to answer this, sir.
Why?
What does it have to do with? I mean, it
really?
has nothing to do with, yeah.
Really?
So I'm not going to entertain those type of questions.
So because you would consider me a criminal for doing exactly what your agency is doing, wouldn't you? That's why you don't want to say it. I understand it's tough. That's how you make a living. You're very heavily invested in this system, and you don't want to answer a question that whose obvious answer, really indicts the organization that you're working for. I get it, but humor me. Just yes or no.
So I mean, that's your belief, and you have the right to that. So I mean, again, I'm not going to entertain that question or answer that for your satisfaction when it's irrelevant to your client's account or the situations.
We're not talking about my client's account. I'm just talking to you as I'm a member of the media, and you are part of the. And I asked you a direct question that just yes or no. If you don't, look, if you could just say yes or no, and then we can move on. But I think I should have an answer to the question.
Again, sir, I'm not going to answer that question.
Because I am a criminal if I force strangers to give me money. And what does that say about the moral basis of how your organization operates?
All right, sir. So I'm going to forward on this message. If you have anything else for me, I'll note that down. Otherwise,
All right.
You have a good day.
Thanks. You too. Oh man, talk. I think that's what the kids would say is savage. Wow. Now I will tell you, this is 2 minutes at the end of a 20-minute call, and I had to walk him through the actual tax issues prior to that. So I'm surprised he was able to laugh like he did at the question to say a good one. Because I had really given it to him. The questions, like he was patient, and he tried to drag it out, and so the discussion on this is, first of all, my belief. Look, if he disagreed with the premise of the question, he could have just said that, but he said he wasn't going to entertain it, and that was common to the prior conversation. He had been saying that a lot, and actually, that is what his compadre there, his co-conspirator, said the next day, that he wasn't going to entertain. And then yesterday, when I spoke to the supervisor was doing the same. I'm not going to entertain. So the fact, so what happened? All right, so it's not my belief. That's how they operate. And if it wasn't immoral, they would just answer the question. Or, if I was characterizing the way that they did work, then he would say, well, your question is beginning with a flawed premise. And then we could discuss that. But he doesn't. He just nervously laughs and refuses to answer the question, and then dodges it later with it's my belief, and then trying to claim that it's irrelevant. If you're trying to take money from someone that I'm working with, and I'm helping, and you are actually stealing from them, how is that irrelevant to whether what you're doing is fair or not? Again, that's why he has to dodge the question. A little bit of background before we got into this. He used all the buzzwords prior to these last 2 minutes. And no, the previous 18 minutes weren't all about taxes. We had some other things we had to discuss, and I had to set up an appointment the next, to speak with his co-conspirator the next day. What I do is I walked him through. Now, there's 2 ways that these people believe that their laws apply to you. And so you want to attack both collaterally and address both of them. They claim that if you're physically in California and you're making money, then their rules apply, their laws, and they have jurisdiction to require a tax return. Or, like with me, because while I'm in California now, I'm usually in Phoenix. And so if I was to receive money from somebody in San Diego, then their laws would apply, and I would be required to file the return. So I was addressing both of these. He wanted to go just really on the money. If you have a California source of money, all right, hey, whatever your claim is there, tough guy, I'll attack that. I'll challenge you on that. All right. Okay. So I walk them through this. So you believe that if I receive money from somebody in San Diego, let's say $1,000, you believe that now your laws apply and I'm obligated to file a return. He says, yes. All right. I said, do you have any actual proof that just because I receive $1,000 from somebody in San Diego that your Constitution applies to me? And that's when he didn't want to discuss it anymore. And he said he's not going to debate the issue with me. I'm arguing. And I don't think you understand what the word debate means. Maybe you're pulling a lawyer trick and you're trying to equivocate and you're just trying to redefine the word to fit your narrative so that you don't have to answer my question. But I'll finish on that when we get back. But that's the new feature, Anarchist, first a statist, first edition here on the No State Project. So don't go away. We'll be right back. Yes, welcome back to the big broadcast here today. Appreciate everyone tuning in on LRN.FM and also catching a stream on my YouTube channel. I don't always, this is the first time I'm doing this on streaming on my YouTube channel, No State Project. So if you're not subbed, you probably, you might not know that I'm actually doing it. So if you do get subbed, you will know when I'm doing it. And I want to be able to do other broadcasts during the week when the opportunity arises. So, because I can't always announce it. If you're subbed, you'll get a notification that, hey, we're going live. So what I just played was the first installment of what I believe is going to be many of Anarchist versus Statist. And, it's one of those things, too, if it's always been an open invitation to come on the show. If somebody thinks that these laws that politicians write, they believe that the constitutions and whatnot, that they apply to anybody, just give a call and present your proof. But just be forewarned, might makes right. No, that is not acceptable. That is not proof. Forcing something on somebody does not create obligations and does not make a written instrument apply to them, no matter how much you spent on a law school education, if that's the background that you're coming from. Might does not make right. It's immoral. I don't care if you say, well, it's legal. Something could be legal and be grossly immoral. I mean, that's the nature. That's what they do. What happened to this man in Minneapolis this week was grossly immoral. It was armed robbery. So, but you're welcome to come on the show. 218-632-9399. The passcode is 2020 with the pound sign to come in. And somebody, I can't remember who actually put this in the chat. And I'm doing a pretty piss poor job at the tracking the No State Project chat, so I apologize for that. But somebody keeps going back and talking about what is California? How can you be in a fiction? If you notice, I insist that we, whenever possible, that we use lay terms, that we do not allow lawyers and bureaucrats or statists to dictate the narrative, that they can conflate or they can equivocate or just use whatever definitions they want and try to throw that stuff out. Like I had one lawyer in New Hampshire say, well, I don't understand why you would say that the laws of the state wouldn't apply in the state. I don't use the word state. So if you remember, when I'm talking about California, I'm talking physically, I'm talking literal, in a lay sense. Physical location, not the state of California, not California state, not any one of these municipal corporations, one of these legal fictions. I'm talking about the ground, my physical. That's why I say my physical location in California. Okay, I'm not saying that, and I always use those terms. And if they want to throw the word state out, you have to have them define the term and what the hell they mean. When you say that I'm in the state, do you mean that I'm physically in San Bernardino or would like to be physically in San Diego next week for Libertopia, but sadly I will not be. And then they should be able to answer you, without equivocation that, yes, they're talking, you're physically here, dude. It's just like when you go to court and they said that they have jurisdiction because you're physically in the court, which means the building, the room. So California is the name of a physical area. And yes, I know they conflate that with the municipal corporation or the government, the body, the alleged body, corporate body politic. We know there's no evidence whatsoever for a body politic. So there's that. But to get back to my call, and these things are very important. I want to, as often as I can, to be able to call these bureaucrats. And so what I was able to do here to get the first edition, which was with a state tax agent, was I had already been working for somebody to get something resolved. And it just, after him give me the runaround, debate and argue, and I was just asking a question, I said I had the opportunity to do that. I figured out, well, it's worth asking, because the one show that I did not post wouldn't have made as good a first, debut edition of the Anarchist versus Statist. It was when the court administrator in Tarrant County, Texas, he just said it was a loaded question. He would not address it. But this guy, at least, hey, I think I made the point. So if anybody was to look at that, and who's the moral one here? Who's acting immorally? The anarchist or the statist? Clearly, it's the statist. There's no question whatsoever. It's the statist. And so some of the things he was saying, this is a very common retort that you get. I'm asking a question. If I was to do things like your organization and I forced strangers to give me money, would you consider me a criminal? That's not an argument. Now, I know people like, lawyers want to reframe it and conflate a question with an argument. They're not the same thing. I can use questions to support my argument based on the responses that I get from you. Sure. But saying that your question is an argument is, in this instance, or that I love this, you're debating. You're debating. What the? No, it's a question. And you heard. I'll play it again later for those who may not, because tuning in late and whatnot. You heard the guy dodge. He was not going to answer the question. Why? It's not because I was debating anything with him. It's not because I was arguing with him. It is because he knows if he answers the question, like I said to him, it indicts his organization as immoral. Because the only way you can go from there, if you say, well, yes, Mark, you're a criminal, but we're not. It would be criminal if it wasn't for the law. But now we're right back to first base. Because I had already spoken to him and he had no evidence whatsoever to prove that just because I made money in San Diego, that their laws applied. So they want to have it both ways. It's like Juan Galt. He wants to be able to push the narrative that I am misleading people because I don't understand prima facie. He wants to come out and say that if there's even the slightest possibility, but he does not want to admit the obvious, well, he actually did once, that there isn't a slight possibility. There is no possibility. Well, it's just to avoid. It's just to avoid answering the questions. And so when I was talking to a lawyer yesterday with the state tax agency, actually this lawyer was with the Franchise Tax Board, and his name was Greg. And as far as bureaucrats go, he seemed like a pretty decent guy. And so they had told me at another department, collections, that if I wanted to ask questions regarding the applicability of the Constitution laws, okay, I had to go to the legal department. And I said, wait a minute. Are you telling me that the legal department made these claims against my client? They wouldn't even answer that. This is when I was talking with collections. So I actually get, and you got to ask him, if I go to the legal department like you're telling me, and they can't prove your laws apply, they can't prove you have jurisdiction, are you going to throw this out? Because if the answer is no, then I just have to say, Abafangul, why are you telling me to go to the legal department if nothing's going to happen? And bottom line, now I have more evidence that no one so far in the collection department has any evidence to support their claim. But I'm talking with Greg yesterday. So I'm giving him an idea what was transpiring, and so that he could be on the same page. So I walk him through the process like I always do. And he says, yes, if I receive money from somebody in San Diego, then the laws, apply and create an obligation on me to file a return. So I ask him, what evidence, if any, do you have that would prove that just because I receive money from someone in San Diego that your Constitution applies to me? Now, mind you, this is a lawyer saying this with the Franchise Tax Board legal department, who comes back and says the Revenue and Taxation Code. The Revenue and Taxation Code. So, we're at the top of the hour break. So I'm going to pick this up right from there, talking with Greg. And I want you to think about how you would respond to something like that. You're asking for evidence, why, what proves that just because you receive money from someone in California, how does that prove that the Constitution applies and there's obligations created? And he says the Revenue and Taxation Code. Do you think that's responsive? We'll be back in just a moment. So if you're watching on the YouTube stream, the call-in number is 218-632-9399. It's 218-632-9399. And the passcode is 2020. We will be back in just a few minutes with and I'll conclude with what happened with Greg in California. So, hey, don't go anywhere. Yes, welcome back to the No State Project. Second of 3 hours of Anarchy Radio right here on the Liberty Radio Network. Anarchist versus a statist. What we'll be doing now, maybe I play that again this hour, maybe next hour, because it's a great 2 minutes. It's a great 2 minutes. But to get back, I was talking with Greg, this is a lawyer with the Franchise Tax Board, the legal department, after collections was completely unable to support their claims against somebody. They pushed it off to the legal department. Because I guess they figure the lawyers are more educated and maybe that they can answer the question and make the case for them. It doesn't matter, So that'd be like the same as a police officer writing you a ticket, signing it on the penalty of perjury or certifying that you violated the law and that the laws apply and you violated them. And then you put him on the stand for cross-examination and he says, you're going to have to ask the legal department. I only enforce the law. I don't have any idea what it means. I don't have any idea what I'm doing. I'm just doing you got to go to the legal department. You're going to have to go, call the AG. Maybe they know. I don't know. So I'm talking with Greg at this Juris Doctorate. Okay, this is an advanced university degree. Remember, this is a tax agency, and keep in mind the no-knock raid that I was just telling you about that happened in Minneapolis, which is how these people conduct themselves and how they routinely take bank accounts and destroy people's lives, how they garnish wages at 100%. Keep this in mind as I walk you through this. He is saying very confidently that if I make money or I'm given money from somebody in San Diego, even though I live in Phoenix, that means their constitution applies and creates an obligation on me to pay taxes and file a return and all this other unpleasant stuff. So I ask him, what evidence do you have that would prove that just because I receive money from someone in San Diego that your constitution applies to me? And he comes back with the revenue taxation code. Well, if you're going through this with these people and you're defending against these vicious animals that they are, you have to know when you're getting a responsive answer to your question. And this is really easy because most of the time, 9 times out of 10, you're not going to get a responsive answer to your question. The further you are questioning them and the closer you're getting to the truth, the less chance you have of getting a responsive answer. Because, they're moments away from admitting that I got nothing. So in that situation, it's not a responsive answer. What he said that the revenue taxation code is not a responsive answer. So you want to have him clarify that. And I'm sorry that I'm I've said this on the show before, but it always bears repeat. The clarifying question is with a little incredulity thrown in there, just to, you're telling me that your position is that your revenue and taxation code somehow is evidence proving your constitution applies to me. Now he's starting to realize he's not a collections guy. He's starting to realize something is definitely wrong with my position and my $150,000 education and all my years of experience with the tax agency can't possibly help me out here. So what he does is he has one of those nervous laughs, says that he really hopes he's not being recorded because this does not make him look good. They have a real problem with the Franchise Tax Board being recorded. Yeah, I can't imagine why when they have no evidence and they're a criminal organization terrorizing people. Anyway, to get back, he gives me this. I couldn't believe what he's saying. Again, as bureaucrats go, decent guy. Wasn't being a jerk. What's happening to the chat? Well, I don't know. So he goes on this narrative saying, because he knows the collection department don't want to talk to me. He already knows this, and that they're being resistant, and that's why they passed the buck to him. The State Department two-step. Never taking responsibility for your actions. Just attack, 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 attack. Oh my gosh, a question. Oh my gosh. Oh, you want me to take responsibility and actually support my claim? That's when they go full retard on you. So anyway, the narrative that he says to me is, I think I understand why the others wouldn't respond. And he says, I get that the feeling that I get talking to you is that you are trying to back me into a corner so that you can then attack me. And I'm thinking, attack? Let that sink in for a second. I have a tax agent who thinks that my question to just clarify his position is trying to corner him so I can attack him. Yeah, see, that's the thing. You never go full retard. But if you've got a prison system to support you and you have a bootlicking judiciary to rubber stamp what you're doing, you can go full retard. Because nothing's going to happen. You're not going to have a judge say, the guy asked you a question. That's not debating. I think he's got a case here for bad faith again. So that's right. It's an attack. I don't have a prison system. I don't have the ability to garnish wages. I don't force perfect strangers to give me money. I couldn't believe it. How fragile are these people that asking a question regarding their own What if I showed up at your house with friends and guns, barged in at gunpoint, and ordered you to open up your safe? Would you consider that an attack? Or something a lot worse than what I'm doing by asking you questions on the phone? See, here's the thing. If you don't like supporting your claims, don't make them. Don't make claims against other people that are going to drastically change the course of their life. Don't intrude into peaceful people's lives if you cannot handle some schmuck from Long Island asking you basic questions regarding your own code and your own claims. I didn't say that the Revenue and Taxation Code was evidence proving the Constitution applied to me. He did. That's why I said, all I'm doing is asking you questions based on what you've already said. And so if you follow here, and I know there's a lot of commentary, I asked him to confirm the way they operate, and he did. If I am receiving money from someone in San Diego, that the Constitution and laws apply and create an obligation on me to file a return and pay taxes. That's what he said, and he confirmed that's how they operate. And he's very willing, I'm sure, and through his career, to sign off on garnishments and to advise people at the Franchise Tax Board to go destroy other people's lives. He's very, very confident that he's right. But when you start asking him questions, that's when it starts falling apart. And I'm going to say it again. Do not, if you want to join me on the big broadcast, we're up against the break. Don't just call me on Skype. I will join you on a break, which we are coincidentally at. So remember, instant message me first. But, if you don't want people, if you're such a snowflake, so to speak, you're so weak-minded and so frail that you can't handle people trying to ask you questions to verify your position, then here's the thing. Don't take a position or make claims against people that are going to damage them, because we're going to do our best to defend against this garbage. Okay, we are on break. Well, I will connect whoever wants to connect on Skype. But so we'll be back. Okay, we got Alan. Oh, here we go. Welcome back to the No State Project. I was trying to connect somebody. Don't know what the problem is. So what we'll do is we'll try to get Alan up in the next segment. So we'll give it a shot. So I will get back to what I was talking to with Craig in California. I do want to point out to someone, a Narcotopia, who's on the chat. I'm an ethical vegetarian anarchist, and that's great. However, to go full ethical, to be ethically consistent, requires one to be vegan. There is no ethical way to get dairy. So But I don't want everyone to start freaking out and says, oh, good Lord, now he's going to start talking about veganism. But, that's the thing. I get the same responses when I talk about veganism from self-proclaimed anarchist and liberty-minded people that I get from people with the Franchise Tax Board and whatnot. So you go back to the call with the state tax agent that I played for the first edition of Anarchist for Statist, and he says something about my belief, and he accuses me of being argumentative and it's irrelevant, and you know what? Why don't we do that? Well, I'll play. Let me finish talking about Greg here, and I don't want anyone thinking that I think he's a douchebag or an actual delicate snowflake. I don't even like using that because it makes you sound like one of these alt-right type of people where everyone is either a snowflake or a libtard. And no, I don't want anyone to think. He's a lawyer, and as far as lawyers and especially lawyers who are also bureaucrats go, he seems like a decent guy. So what we actually wound up doing was he was saying that he was not an expert in constitutionality. And this is something that we're going to get all the time also. When somebody makes a claim against you that if you make money in Arizona, the laws apply, and you're create an obligation to pay taxes. When you ask them for the actual evidence to support that claim, you're not challenging constitutionality of their tax laws. As I say, he brought up the spurious garbage. Well, he had brought up constitutionality. He had brought up the revenue and taxation code. And so before he wants to bring in an expert. And I told him, I said, you do understand that I'm making an issue of fact. I'm raising an issue of evidence. I'm asking you if you have any actual proof. I'm not talking about constitutionality. I'm not saying that your revenue and taxation code is unconstitutional. I just want you said, I'm not attacking. You said that the revenue and taxation code is the evidence. In response to my question, you said it was evidence that the Constitution applied to me. I just wanted you to verify that was your position. And that's when you realized you may have misspoke. Because as I've spoken with agents before, the code is not evidence that the Constitution applies. The Constitution is supposed to be evidence that the code applies. Because all legislative power herein granted in a Congress or, whatever, if it's the state. So he made another last ditch effort to say something. Well, we got to get an expert. And I don't know what particular sections. I said, I'll be more than happy to have a conference call and confront, and discuss this matter with your expert, because that would be great. You do have to understand that I'm not making a constitutional argument. I'm saying it. You don't, and no one at the collections department, none of you have any actual evidence to support your claim. That's where you have insufficient evidence. It's nothing to do with legal interpretation, and I'm not saying in any way that your revenue and taxation code may or may not be constitutional. So what we have scheduled for Tuesday, and boy, I want to record this. We have it set for Tuesday that we're going to have a conference call with their expert on the Constitution. So does anyone think for a second that their expert is going to be producing any kind of proof that just because I have money from San Diego that their Constitution applies? No. And hopefully I can record it, but I will definitely take notes and record it that way if I can't record it. And we'll compare that with what this expert says. We'll compare it to what the other self-proclaimed expert said on the show, Juan Galt, last week. And we'll see if he makes the argument that the Constitution applies because of force. We'll see if he does that. I don't think he's going to do that. I don't see it. I see what he's going to do is he's just going to say, take it to court. He's just say, if you think your argument is true, then go through the protest process. If you lose there, then bring it into court. That I think is going to be the most likely thing. And he'll conflate what I'm doing. He'll accuse me of debating or arguing, but he won't actually address it. So we'll see. We'll see if he is as smart as some of the critics, where he'll come out and say, might makes right. The fact that we can force you to do this, that gives us the jurisdiction. It's got nothing to do with the Constitution or the laws. It has everything to do with the fact that we're willing to shoot you in the process of taking your property, or actually taking what is our property that you just seem to be holding on to right now. So we'll see. We'll see. And maybe I will have another edition of Anarchist versus Statist, because right now it's Anarchist 1, Statist 0. As far as that goes, it's something like 1,000 to 0 when it comes to being able to prove that their laws actually apply to anybody. I think we got a caller over here. We got a Skype caller. Maybe this is Alan. Skype caller, you're live on. Okay, they decided to drop off, or maybe they dropped off before I could get them. So hopefully we get them back. I could take a look over here. Okay, now I don't know what's going on. So anyway, these are some of the tactics that these people will be using. So if you are new to the No State Project and you are looking to defend yourself against these people, you'll do yourself a big favor to not take at face value what lawyers are like Juan Galt are saying. Critically analyze what the man has presented. Now, I can't listen. I can't go through his videos anymore, but I had him on the show and it was absolutely brutal. Hey, can we get the... yeah, we don't need to have any of the homophobic or the gay references here on the chat. So if there's another gay reference there, we'll have to get rid of them. What was I saying? I shouldn't even have done that. But all right. So these are some of the tactics that they're going to use. So if you just assume that everything that comes out of the lawyer's mouth, or anything that the bureaucrat says, that it's a lie, our job is to use the Socratic method to ask questions, to bring out contradictions, to bring out that what they're saying is absolutely false. And one of the best ways to do that is to ask leading questions. Leading questions. Any half idiot who's a member of the Bar Association knows that how effective a leading question is, and it's always allowed on cross-examination. But a leading question, in fact, you know what? I'll lead off with that when we come back. My name is Mark Stevens. We'll be back here on the No State Project in just a few moments, so don't go away. Yes, welcome back to the No State Project. I'm your host, Mark Stevens, coming to you live from the fortified compound in Mesa, Arizona. And yes, I'm trying to get rid of the troll from the chat, so hopefully on the YouTube chat. So it wouldn't be YouTube without someone like that. So we're doing our best to, I think we got them removed, Big Dillo. So I think we've got them at least removed from the chat for now. But welcome back, everybody. Get to the call in just a moment because I was going to lead off with a leading question. Well, leading question. So it would be, is a leading question one that has the information in the question? So there you go. Yes, because it requires a yes or no answer, typically. And the information is in the question. So a non-leading question, which is you're only allowed to ask non-leading questions on a direct examination, unless you have a hostile witness. A non-leading question, which is appropriate for direct examination, would be something like, after Mark Stevens called you, what did he say anything to you? So what did you do after Mark called? That's a good non-leading question. And so the information, all the information has to be given by the witness, and you're not influencing the testimony in any direct way. So, all right. Well, hopefully we've got this straightened out. We've got area code 901. You're live on the No State Project. What's your name? Where you calling from?
My name is Cody. I'm calling from Tennessee.
What can we do for you today, Cody?
Sir, I really like what you do for the world. I was going to ask you, because I kind of got in some traffic situation. I went to court and they made me plead not guilty. And then I went to the clerk and asked for a subpoena, and she told me that only a licensed attorney can get a subpoena. And I'm thinking, I want to ask her, does the Constitution, am I only procedures, and we don't have free, we don't have free access to the same procedures that attorneys do? I mean, shouldn't all the people have access to that kind of stuff? So, I mean, I don't know.
Well, when they said they made you plea, what did the judge say to you to make you believe that you had to plea not guilty?
Well, he had everybody in the room that was scheduled for the 9:30, and then we all came up alphabetically ordered. And as soon as you stand up, whenever he calls your name and start walking, he's asking you while you're walking to the bench what you pleaded. But before all that even happened, he sternly reprimanded the whole crowd. This is what you will do. I will not allow you to talk, even say anything, until you plead. And if you start talking, then I will enter a not guilty plea for you and escort you out. He laid it all out just like that.
What is this scumbag's name?
He's the Marion County judge in Arkansas. Thorne, I think his last name is Thorne.
Thorne. And where in Arkansas? Where in Arkansas did this take place?
Marion.
Okay, got it. Marion County. All right, I'll look up and see if I can find something on this guy. The thing is, you could have still filed if you had the motion to dismiss. Did you file the motion to dismiss before this?
No, see, I didn't really come across all of your stuff until like a couple of days before my hearing, and Marion is kind of like an hour and a half away from where I actually live and job and stuff like that. So I just figured that I would go there and then maybe try to do something, and then maybe if I get a trial, then maybe start hopefully recovering things between now and the trial, even though I've already pled and signed the document that I'm going to trial.
Well, you did it on a threat, duress, and coercion, so you could file to get that taken. But you can still file the motion to dismiss and the discovery request. So I would definitely that. And I would file a complaint against him with the Judicial Conduct Commission and the Bar Association for his being a bully, because to limit an arraignment to guilty or not guilty and not allow a jurisdictional challenge is just that's just being a bully, and it's unfair, because you could have very well have gone in and said, well, I intend on pleading guilty. Has the prosecution met their burden of proof on jurisdiction? And so for him to not allow a jurisdictional challenge, and that's just unfair. So you can also file to have the judge recused, because he's a bully. And I would use that word. He is a bully, and he lied. He threatened us he threatened us and lied, saying that all we could do was plead guilty or not guilty, and making it clear he would throw us out if we defended ourselves by challenging jurisdiction.
Yeah. I wanted to call the news station too, like as soon as I got out of there, I couldn't believe, it looked like a whole group of people. I felt really sad that the world is where it is, because, it was just a whole big room of people with their heads down, and then he likes to talk about Mexicans, how everything is so messed up now because he can't pronounce people's names. It was the wildest thing I've ever came across in my life.
Wait a minute. The thing is, wow, what a jerk, because I don't speak Spanish, but Spanish is not Spanish, as far as I know, it's all phonetic. How it's spelled is how it's pronounced. You have certain things like Mexico where there's certain rules there, but for the most part, it's not a difficult language to read and say. I could see if you had Russian, or if you had Polish, where you had 16 consonants in a row, or something that was Swedish. But this guy's complaining about Mexico, Spanish. What kind of a how bad are you language-wise that you can't read and speak Spanish? What would he do with someone who is Jewish? Coming in with Yiddish or okay. So I'll look that up and see if I can find any information about this guy. But what I would do, file the motion to dismiss with the Brady request, and file a motion, and I have a template for this also, to change the judge, that he was a bully and he misled everyone in the court into thinking that they could not challenge jurisdiction, which is a pre-trial motion as well as during and after trial motion. Sounds
good. Yeah, I'm just how do you get to isn't there a forum?
Yes, I have a forum on my website, markstevens.net.
What is that? How do you get involved with that?
Well, you go to markstevens.net or you can email me at markstevens@mail.com. Send me a username that you want. I will create the account for you, and then you can post on there questions and concerns and interest, and that are in line with the theme of the website. But hold on just a moment.
Right.
We'll be back here with Cody in Tennessee, dealing with a real bully named Thorne in Marion County, Arkansas. Yeah, a false. Yeah, there's only two options. No, there's door number 3, and we'll talk about that when we get back in just a moment, so don't go away. Yes, welcome back to the No State Project right here on LRN.FM, the Liberty Radio Network. And 2018, glad to be with you here. We'll get another, we'll play again, if you missed it, Anarchist versus a Statist. And a new feature on the big show at markstevens.net. The video and the good audio will be available. Although I heard that the audio on this show has been pretty good considering the lack of upload speeds. But we'll get that. And it has to do with bringing the moral issue and the question to the bureaucrats themselves. Can they make a moral argument for the organization that they work for? And of course they can. Somebody's saying here that the only purpose of jurisdiction, it's GGG 1234, the only purpose of an arraignment is a plea. No. The issue has to be jurisdiction. Do they have jurisdiction to even take a plea? They're acting as if they do. There has to be evidence to prove that. So the issue about understanding, I'll get back to. I wanted to address any questions or concerns that you may have, Cody, to be able to prep for court. Cody.
Yes.
So what questions or concerns do you have about going in and defending against this Thorne guy, because he actually is the one that's prosecuting you?
Yeah, there was no prosecutor in there that day. He was he would get people up there, and if everybody felt compelled to plead guilty in the hopes that he would lessen their fine, or it seemed. Observation, it seemed like the black people got the heavier hand, and whenever they pled guilty, he kind of, oh, you were sagging your pants, so you're lucky you're not getting thrown in jail or something. And and then the 18-year-old kid who's speeding 85 miles an hour in a 55, smoking weed, oh, your mom's here, oh, well, just go to a driver's ed class, and I'll, and I know your daddy, and just we'll make everything go away, kind of deal.
Yeah, what a nice guy. What I would do is I would give a heads up to the Marion County risk management and let them know that not only has he already damaged you, he seems hell bent on damaging you a lot more, and you're giving them a heads up that they may want to keep an eye on this guy because he's putting the county at great risk because he's so reckless and such a bully.
Yeah, that the risk management is that just like a private insurance company that the judge himself to get insurance through, or is that paid through taxpayer money to the insurance company?
The risk management,
what is that?
Yeah, risk management, the county self-insures, or the city will self-insure, the state, they'll self-insure, and in some places they will get additional coverage or have that reinsured by a private company. All the funds are stolen from people in Marion, in the area they call Marion County. Through taxes. The judges are covered. There are, more than enough court cases. They are county employees. They are covered. If they damage you, then at least technically the county's risk management claim, or the self-insurance, is liable for a claim of damages. So just give him a heads up. He's already damaged me. He's going to continue. You should know about this. I'm giving you full warning, and maybe let the county commissioners know you've got a bully who's got a reckless disregard for fairness and due process, and he is going to bring liability issues on the county. Let them know. Let the county know this piece of garbage's name. If he wants to bully people, let them know he's opening the county up for liability.
through written letters, just or like affidavits or something?
No, you don't need an affidavit. What you can do is you can just send a formal letter to them saying, I'm giving you a heads up. If he can, since it looks like he's going to continue damaging me, I will be filing a claim against the county's risk management for the damage he's causing me. I want you to know in advance that so that you're aware of the situation, because if they're aware of the situation and they don't do anything to stop him, now you've got more, what I believe is more responsibility on the county, because they took no action to stop him. They knew that this guy was reckless because you had told them and tell him, you can witness how reckless he is by going into court on this day and watch what he does. Just sit in the back and watch. I think this is something we should all be doing. Let risk management know in advance. Hey, it's great to have me or someone as a media rep. I think it's even better for risk management to see this animal at work.
Wow.
Why should the question is why should they be?
A big change could come.
Maybe.
That's why. I mean, my first thought was, wow, why people should see this guy in action. That's why I was like, my first thing was like, call like a news station and say he's like racist, in the courtroom openly and stuff. That's like a big thing these days is racism and stuff.
Yeah. But the thing is, I'm not going to discourage anybody from going to the media, trying that. I think we have to be our own media and use YouTube and use the internet. But you might get somebody interested. I have never been able to get media interested, no matter how vicious these people are. And I'll tell you, a lot of bureaucrats and politicians scare media. But I think judges scare them the most because the judges can just order them in jail. And yeah, it might be overturned. Sure. There might be a media outcry, but the judge is going to get away with it.
So how is risk management? Do you think that they would actually fear just a normal citizen who's complaining about a judge? I mean, I'm actually threatening to make a claim. Is that basically what you're saying?
I don't think but I don't look at it as an issue of necessarily fear. I think they're looking at it as a matter of dollars and cents. If you have a credible report about a judge that could cost the county a lot of money. Look, if you take it and you file your claim for damages and they tell you no, you could file into court. There's no sovereign immunity for damages done by a county employee. The judge, you're not suing the judge. He's only the one who caused the damage, and the city or the county rather is liable for it. He's going to be a witness at this point that you're going to call later, but it's going to cost them a lot of money in attorney's fees to defend against your complaint. So they may look at it as a dollar and cents. Well, look, this judge really is we get that he's abrasive or whatnot, and he's looking at maybe $1,000 fine. This is going to cost us maybe $5,000 to $10,000 in attorney's fees. Maybe that's enough account for risk management to say, maybe we should just have someone talk to the judge and say that this liability, or maybe to the city attorney or the county attorney rather, instead of the judge directly. And maybe the county attorney gets involved. Maybe this is too big a liability to pursue. And maybe in the interest of justice, it can be dropped since it is just a stupid traffic case.
Okay.
I think it's worth it. So what I would recommend that you do before we're out of time, because we're at the top of the hour break, in any moment now, I would file the motion to dismiss with the Brady requests and file against the judge to change the judge, which he's probably going to deny anyway. But you want to bring up that he bullied you and that he misled you by saying that the only thing you could do is plead guilty or not guilty, that he was not going to allow a challenge of jurisdiction, which is a standard pretrial procedure.
All right. Sounds good, Mark.
All right. Well, keep in touch with me. Let me know what happens.
I will.
All right. Appreciate the call. Cody in Tennessee, and I'll talk more about this on the other side of the break. We're going into the third of 3 hours of Anarchy Radio here on the Liberty Radio Network, and also streaming live in 480 on my YouTube. At least I'm thinking it's 480. It's actually pretty good on my YouTube channel, which is No State Project. And what gets me is I I think there's a lot of merit, and it could turn out to be very advantageous to us to getting these things tossed out if we are not allowing, we're doing what we can to not let these judges operate in obscurity. And that's why I went to city councils and tried to get a hearing to pull these judges out of their hallowed halls, get them off the bench, get them to where they have to answer questions into some kind of hearing. But if we can get risk management to just sit in and actually witness this guy doing that, that might have an impact. Well, I'll discuss that more on the other side of this break. So don't go away. We'll be right back. Yes, welcome back to the No State Project here on LRN.FM and streaming live from my YouTube channel, No State Project. And you can get this. It will be posted at markstevens.net today. That's what's easy about the YouTube stream. I can just get it right up there with no editing, which is pretty nice. So, but I welcome back for this third of 3 hours of Anarchy Radio right here from the fortified compound in San Bernardino for April 28th, 2018. We're talking about risk management. But before I get into that, apparently Misty Johnson is still under the impression that the ticket is prima facie evidence, so that what's on the ticket is prima facie evidence. And again, we've already gone through this. There is a rebuttable presumption that is created if there are facts that, if there is the slightest chance, proves the claim. And is there a slight chance that my physical location proves the laws apply to me? No. So even if the cop is alleging I violated the law, that's not a rebuttable presumption, even if he shows that I don't have a driver's license, because there's no evidence of jurisdiction, and you can, and if you have no evidence the code applies to me, there's no possibility that I violated the code, because there's no possibility it applies to me. There has to be the slightest possibility, and there isn't the slightest possibility. How many examples of this do I have to go through? In fact, Misty, go through the videos I have, the calls, and I have a call from Alan Rodbell he's the chief of the Scottsdale Police, completely unable to show any evidence that these rules and laws apply to me. So you can accuse me of violating them all friggin' day, but you're accusing me of violating laws and rules that you have no evidence apply to me. So there's absolutely no chance that these facts that they're alleging and support the allegation. And if there's no chance that they support the allegation, you don't have a prima facie. You have it. It's not prima facie evidence. Evidence is information. It's facts that prove or tend to prove that the proposition is true. There is no possibility. None. This is why when I confront Scott Bales, who is the Chief Justice of the Arizona Supreme Court, all he could say was that the evidence proving that their rules apply to me is because they put other people in prison. Now, that's a non sequitur 20 miles wide. One has absolutely nothing to do with the other. Putting people in prison does not prove that these rules apply to me. It just proves you put other people in prison on the false pretenses. So you got to look at, does the facts have any possibility, even the slightest possibility, of proving the allegation? And here the answer is unequivocally no. No. And if you think otherwise, you're more than welcome to call into the show and show me where I'm wrong. Show me where there is even the slightest possibility that my physical location proves the Constitution applies to me. Even the slightest. I would like to see it. A rebuttable presumption is a chance. The ticket was designed to meet prima facie requirements. No, it doesn't, though. It may be designed to do that, but it doesn't, because there isn't even the slightest chance that they can do that. It's the same thing when we go in with the IRS and that to overcome the Anti-Injunctive Tax Act, that the IRS under no circumstances can make a case, and they can't, because it's impossible to prove that this written instrument called the Constitution applies to anybody. So, let's get to risk management. A lot of people have asked me about this. Maybe we can spend some time doing that. It's a slow call day for the big broadcast today, which is fine, because it just tells me you're more interested in what I got to say. Somebody had also asked me this on the chat. They were asking, how do I sue the judge or county? Well, first of all, let's get it out of our heads right now that we can sue the judge. Even though technically, if you can show the judge did it without any evidence of jurisdiction and knew he had no evidence, and he can't plead ignorance on that. He or she can't plead ignorance of that. I didn't know I didn't have evidence of jurisdiction. The guy asked you. He brought it up in a motion. So even though you have technically remedy against judge and you can overcome absolute immunity, same with prosecutors, The practical aspect of it is we are not going to be allowed. So what we want to do to get the ball rolling, and this is something I don't want these people operating in obscurity. They are doing what they're doing and they're getting away with it because nobody really knows. It's not in the public eye. So you had a judge recently that berated a woman with asthma. And it was only because the video went viral that she resigned. People need to see what these judges are doing because they are the scum of the earth. Prosecutors and judges usually former prosecutors. They are the worst of the worst because as bad as cops are, as bad as IRS agents are, they could not get away with what they're doing if they did not have a complicit judiciary. If you didn't have these scumbag judges letting them get away with it. It's like Kaczynski said, prosecutorial misconduct is at epidemic levels and only judges can stop it. And that's where, so the buck stops here. It's the judges allowing them to get away with it. They are the worst of the worst as far as I'm concerned. Because they're in a position, they're gatekeepers. They could stop the abuse. They just choose not to because they're profiting from it. So we want to start with a claim against risk management for either the city or the county or the state. And I think in a situation like this, and this is what I'm going to do with every time somebody buys if you get the motion to dismiss templates, we're going to have in there where you're automatically, this is what we need to do. We're going to have a template to send out that you've already been damaged by this bully and also include the prosecutor if they're involved. You think it's pretty certain that that if they are not stopped, they are going to continue and causing even more damage to you and putting the county at liability for damages. And that you are going to be, if the judge continues to damage you and the prosecutor, if they continue to damage you, that you're going to file a claim. And maybe this is going to go to the risk management and it should also go to the county commissioners. Let them know. And if there's a city manager, let it go to the city manager if it's the city. So it's going to the city council and it's going to the city manager. Let them know. So maybe, just maybe, when you've got these people doing this, you can have risk management in there and they could say to a prosecutor, look, this is wrong. This is a huge lawsuit that even if they ultimately don't win, is going to cost the county thousands in attorney's fees. I've seen for myself what this guy is doing. And again, we may not get through, but if we can, to a judgment, but if we can just get into the pretrial process, again, we're not naming the judge and the prosecutor as defendants, so there's no sovereign immunity there. You're going against risk management's claim, insurance. You're going, which specifically covers damages caused. So as long as you can show the damage, it's not an issue of immunity. What we'd like to be able to do is if we can get it into the discovery process, you can now call the prosecutor and put them into a deposition and the judge. Of course, they're going to fight you tooth and nail. And if they lose, they'll just appeal it. And if we lose, then we have to appeal it to be able to get the deposition. Because if we can get the deposition, and I have no doubt that we would get the same kind of responses that you've heard on all the call of shames that I get from prosecutors and some judges. So it's nice to have Scott Bales, the Supreme Court, be able to. Can you imagine getting a judge into a deposition and just like with this Judge Thorne and asking him, please verify that on this day, when Cody was there with all these other people, because you can get you can actually show him a transcript, but because a recording that you actually said that the only thing you could do is plead guilty or not guilty, and that if you said anything else, you're going to be escorted out, and then you walk them through the process about that there's supposed to be jurisdiction. But we'll be back with this. We'll continue on the other side of the break. So hey, don't go away. Don't go away. You know, I know some people making comments about this silence, and I really apologize about that. But since, you know, this is coming up, I want to address this, so we'll have some additional, additional material for the show. Misty just seems, it seems to, you know, that I should watch Juan Galt's video as to why the judges are saying what they're saying. I know why the judges are saying what they're saying when we confront them with this, because they're dishonest. They're covering for the prosecution. They're covering for the prosecutor. They're former prosecutors. And when they were prosecutors, judges gave them a free pass. And that's what the judges are doing now. I disagree with the judges. I don't believe that what the judges are saying is fair. I think that what the judges are doing is simply covering for the prosecution. That's it. I can clearly set forth in no uncertain terms that it's absolutely impossible for them to make a prima facie case, which then creates that they can meet their prima facie burden, and that creates a rebuttable presumption. The fact that is, and that Misty and others, well, I guess it's just Misty, the only one who's saying anything. What you're missing here is the judge is a criminal. And even Juan Galt, who you seem to put so much credibility in for whatever reason, admitted that government is an immoral organization. They are criminals. And so they're going to do and say things to avoid the truth. They're going to do things to avoid making the prosecutor look bad. This is why we have judges who lie saying jurisdiction is a trial issue only. It's not. There are pretrial motions to dismiss based on the lack of evidence, lack of personal jurisdiction. Okay, so it's dead wrong for anyone to claim that that you can't challenge jurisdiction pre-trial. It's also dead wrong when you say that, and I don't care necessarily what the judges are actually saying, okay, because it's wrong every time, because you have to, they are not meeting the minimal standard, like I've said so many times on the show already today. There is no possibility, zero possibility, okay, that the facts prove the allegation. They are ignoring that. So whatever verbal diarrhea is spewing from this jackass with the robe on is not addressing the actual real issue here. And the issue hinges on this. Does the facts, as alleged, support the allegation? Is there any chance of that? Damn it, you gotta accept that there's no evidence. You have to. And it doesn't matter how the judge is trying to spin that. And it doesn't matter how Juan Galt is trying to spin that. There has to be some possibility, even a slight possibility, and there is no possibility. I don't want to hear about his videos anymore. If you think that there's a slight possibility, Misty, call the show and demonstrate how there is even a slight possibility that my physical location meets that prima facie burden to prove, even slightly, that the Constitution applies and that there's jurisdiction. Because I would love to see that. Nobody is able to produce that evidence, because here's a clue for those who are new. There is no evidence. Because we're back here live on the big show, and I was just talking about was regarding the slight chance that you need to create a rebuttable presumption. And something that, Misty, I think you're missing too, is maybe you've never actually gone into the lion's den. I have, and we have reports from people every single week here on the show. They are not doing a rebuttable presumption. They are doing an irrefutable presumption. They are not even allowing you the opportunity to rebut it. So even if we give you a pass, that's not how they're doing it. So she's saying you got it backwards. Once the rebuttable presumption is established, you have to rebut with evidence, not an accusation, no evidence. You have to prove no evidence. We proved that there's no evidence. It's very simple. You have to have the evidence to get the presumption. If you can, and I've already demonstrated, if you show that they have no evidence, they have to strip them of the presumption. So one of the examples that I gave is the IRS has to have some factual basis to support their assessment. If you can show that the foundation has no factual support, then they have to strip them of their presumption. The facts Supporting the allegation creates the rebuttable presumption, not the other way around. I'm not getting it backwards. What I'm pointing out is that the judge is improperly giving a refutable presumption to the prosecution, despite the fact that there is no chance that the facts prove the allegation. I can't make it any clearer than that. I'm not getting it backwards. So maybe I'll address this again, but to get back before I take a call, for the risk management, for now, let's make it a part of everything that we do, that we are. The evidence is not on the ticket. They have your physical location, Misty. We already know your physical location is on the ticket. I've done this dozens of times with judges directly. I know, anecdotal. I've done it directly with judges. And the only thing they point out as far as jurisdiction is your physical location that the police officer has given. And when you bring out and you ask them, how does my physical location in any way prove that the Constitution applies? They admit it doesn't. And then they admit that the ticket is not evidence of anything. Okay, so I've spoken about this many times. So let me get to my call. And I just prefer if Misty, if you just call, it's easier. But we've got Dorothy from Arizona. Welcome back to the big show.
Oh, hi, Mark. This is Dorothy.
Yes, it's been a while. You have good news for us?
No, I'm still working on it, but I have another issue, and I don't know if it's appropriate for the show, but I'll ask you, and you can say yay or nay, okay?
Okay.
I have a medical marijuana card, and I know for a fact that my primary care is probably going to drop me because of that. Now, if it's a state-run program, and I'm legal, I guess, what you want to call it. And even though the AMA is not endorsing it or have a say, they're just basically rejecting everything. But anyway, does a medical facility, excuse me, have a right to refuse medical treatment to me when I'm complying with the law?
I wouldn't think so, no.
So if they say that they cannot treat me, then what do you think I should do?
Well, what for? I mean, is this an emergency room?
No, it's just my regular doctor. See, first of all, I'm a full-time wheelchair user. I'm a double amputee. And so I've got a lot of nerve and damage and pain. And so I take medication. I used to be on all sorts of medication, like morphine and all this other stuff. And all it did was, make me into a zombie. And so I was 50 years old when I first tried the medical marijuana, and it just took care of everything. And then I wasn't in a stupor all the time and everything. And so in order to get pain meds and stuff like that, they have Arizona, of course, has a very strict policy on that. And you have to go to a specialist on that. And they give you a urine test, all that and everything. And when I was in Oregon in Kaiser, they wouldn't prescribe any more medication to me or see me because, they say there was marijuana usage, obviously shown in my urine. So, but when I moved to Arizona, of course, with the climate and everything, it really helped out and everything. But what I'm saying is that do I file a lawsuit, or do I talk to risk management, or what do I need to do if they drop me? Because when I go see the doctor, she wants to have a talk with me, and I know it has to do with that.
Yeah, I don't know about a lawsuit. I mean, the important thing here is that you're getting the medical treatment you need. So is this a state facility that's not giving you, or is it a county hospital that's not giving you the treatment?
No, it's a regular private. It's Adelante Healthcare. It's just a regular healthcare facility. It's my regular doctor.
I don't know enough about the ethics there. It's at first blush, I would say that, at least it's unethical for them to do that. As far as holding them accountable, I don't know.
Well, the thing is, though, is that if I know there's, obviously the federal law is different, but anyway, if you're complying with the state code and you've got the medical card and you're authorized and everything like that, and you're authorized to cultivate and do whatever, then a medical facility should not reject you.
I agree that they shouldn't. Whether it's something that you can have them legally held accountable for, that I don't know. So I can't answer that for sure. I'd have to, maybe a quick search on the internet can find that out, but that's definitely not my area of expertise.
So that's what, it just is I know that, I got kicked out of Kaiser healthcare system because of that. And, but anyway, I refused to go back to the morphine and the Vicodin and all that kind of stuff and everything. And they just hand it to me like candy, and I don't need it and I don't want it. And it's very harmful to my kidneys, liver, and everything. But anyway, just as a summary on my other issue.
I'm up against the break, and I'm going to do my best to try to get to everybody. So with the other issue, okay, shoot me an email and I will respond off air.
Okay, good deal.
All right.
Thank you.
I appreciate the call, Dorothy.
Okay.
All right, my name is Mark Stevens. You're listening to the No State Project here on LR.FM. And I think what I'm going to do before I take other calls, I'm going to blow through the commercial here. And I'm going to just go directly, go over this. And I want to address what Misty is raising. Because I have not only directly confronted judges on this in court, and I've done it with agents and whatnot that talk about an assessment, but I've done it directly with Juan Galt, who's on the show, and Juan Galt gave a list of what was on the ticket, and then I addressed that. So, regardless of what Juan Galt thinks, if it's effective in court or not, it's proven itself very effective in court on 3 continents, including Israel. So if the judge says the ticket is the evidence, what I come back and say, and unless I remember Judge Garcia in Mesa, Arizona, I did this with him. I've mentioned him before because it was the last time I actually did it in court. He was insisting that the evidence of jurisdiction was on the ticket. So what I did was I had a copy of the ticket. I said, what on this ticket leads you to believe it's evidence proving that your Constitution applies and gives you jurisdiction over me? And that was enough to get him to back off and say, well, actually, the ticket isn't evidence of anything. So, but he couldn't show anything on the ticket that was to support his claim that the ticket was evidence of jurisdiction. Yeah, I know they're referencing the ticket. That's why I say you go from the vague to the specific. What exactly on this ticket is evidence proven to code apply? What? Because the cop alleged I broke the law? How does his allegation prove the Constitution applies to me? He alleges I don't have a driver's license. How does the allegation prove in any way, even the slightest degree, that the Constitution applies to me? He says, I don't have a driver's license. How does my not having a driver's license does it have even the slightest possibility of proving that the Constitution applies to me? It doesn't. He gives my physical location on let's say, I-60, or, well, that's probably a bad example. That I'm on Apache Boulevard. How does my physical location, does that have any chance whatsoever in and of itself? Is there any chance, even the slightest possibility, that my being on Apache Boulevard proves the Constitution applies? You see, every single thing that is on the ticket, we can go back and we can ask, does this meet the standard? Does this When you take them together, do all the facts taken together that he's alleges, is there any possibility that all of these facts on the ticket, my physical location, not having a driver's license, the allegations of the police officer, do any of that, with all of that, does that have even a slightest possibility of proving a Constitution applies to me? No. I can't make it any easier. And I'm glad these are coming up, because at least I can explain that to people who may be new and may be swayed by this trash that this lawyer is putting out. Nothing on the ticket has even the slightest possibility of proving the constitutional laws apply to me. Therefore, no rebuttable presumption can be created, no matter how many allegations, no matter how many affidavits that they file. None of it. I get to accept Galt's reality would threaten your livelihood. Now, you see, you're avoiding the issue. I don't even have a livelihood. I barely make a living. He's the rich one. So don't attack me on that. I am addressing it. I'm not hiding from you, Misty. I'm not hiding from the arguments. I'm directly addressing every single thing that you're putting forth, and it doesn't have any merit. Again, if you or anyone believe, and I think we're going to have somebody here, if you believe that the facts alleged support the allegations and show, and that there's even the slightest chance that they prove the Constitution applies, present the evidence, show how that does. Because even one Galt, I accept part of his reality. You have to have the slightest, you got to have the slightest possibility. And you can't demonstrate that, because even he said it doesn't. So I don't know if I am back from the break or not. Yeah, we're back here live. So for the LRN stream, we're back here live on the No State Project on LRN.FM, the Liberty Radio Network, and my YouTube channel, No State Project. And so we're going to be doing a lot more. Somebody came up with the idea I should do a live stream with a call with the lawyers in the Franchise Tax Board in California next week. And that's pretty cool. I may actually do that, but I do have to let them know that I'm recording. So I may not be able to continue recording if they don't want to get recorded. So, but he's been on the show for a few hours already. I'm going to warn in advance that I am absolutely not going to have, this is going to be ICBMcatcher. I am using the mute button only to make sure that you're professional and that you do not talk over me. And I will not allow a gish gallop on my show. So if somebody starts doing a narrative that is not a response to a question, I will mute them. It's not a form of censorship. So please, as long as we can keep by the rules and have a professional discussion, then we have no problem. And there's no mute button. So welcome back to the show, ICBMcatcher.
Good evening.
What do you got today?
Well, I'm just calling in. I want to sort of bring up some of the stuff we've touched on before, but never gone into in any depth. I'm still trying to figure out why your support of Spoonerism and your ideology hasn't taken hold. If it's such a great way of life, why hasn't it taken hold, Mark?
Well, if slavery was such a bad thing and sex trafficking, if it was such a bad thing, why hasn't it been abolished? If everyone's against it and everyone wants to see people having freedom and they're against slavery and sex trafficking, why is it still here?
Mark, I'm asking you a direct question. I'd like a direct answer, as I promised to give to you. Why hasn't your ideology, if it's such a great, great way of life, why hasn't it swept the nation, swept the world?
Well, we have addressed this before. It's not my ideology. It's been around for an awful long time. So it's not my ideology. I am not the, well, let me finish. I am not, as you are more than implying, I'm not the one who just out of the blue just said, hey, let's reject ruling classes as immoral. It's been around for a long time. So it's not my ideology. Why hasn't it catched? Why? Well, I think it's a very tough thing. It's and I've answered this question before, and I'll repeat like I said to you before. Even in the Declaration of Independence, they recognize that social change is a very slow process, that people will put up with abuse and abuse and abuse rather than taking the initiative and the risk to correct it. So, people are complacent. You have human apathy. That is one. You have massive media coverage that glorifies government. And you also have, to be brief, you have the fact that government has been able to give favors so that people, because they have benefits, will overlook how the violent nature and the true violent nature of government. So those are some pretty good reasons why I believe we are not there yet. I believe we're getting there. It's a slow process.
Okay, well, I'd like to just make a comment on that, and then we can move on to the next thing. But with what you just went through there, good ideas, good approaches to things, especially with the advent of internet, take over like mad. You know it, I know, and everybody listening knows it. So if this voluntary society that you dream of is practical and would even come close to working in a 300 million person society, I think anyone with any sense would agree that it would have taken hold by now, or at least been bigger than it is. So, yeah, but I mean, that's what I'd say about that. You want to move on to something else?
No, just momentarily, because, and I'll blow through the commercials and I'll give you even more time. Just give me a second. Okay. Sure. You even agreed on the show that you have no problem with the rationale of anarchy. You even agree with it. Your problem is that you don't think that we can implement it. So it seems to be that you are...
Not quite.
Not quite.
Can I clarify, or do you want to go on?
You clarify, yeah.
I just don't think anarchy is practical in anything but small groups. To leave each person to decide for themselves what they're going to do, in a broad sense, I mean, that's fine in small groups, but it would never work. And as a matter of fact, we had anarchy and we got rid of it because it didn't work.
Well, I don't think that's historically accurate. And I've spoken to you about this before. And a good example is in 1774 to there was about a year period between 1774 and 1775 where in Massachusetts there was no government, and except for Boston.
Right.
And what happened was,
but
let me finish. But what happened there was that the certain rich white landowners decided to pick up and continue the taxing districts. So they, without any vote of the people who had worked so hard to get rid of the British authorities, they just started they just picked up the old reins, so to speak, and imposed government rule on the community again.
Again, I love that you brought that obscure thing up, because one of the things I like everyone to know is I always wonder, you bring up some of these super obscure things that are technically correct, I guess, but they're a little bit out of context. And what happens is you Google stuff, and that's why you came up with, last time we spoke, you came up with something. I said that rulers aren't generally elected. I guess I said something like that, and then you all of a sudden you came up with some pope or something that had been elected, and I'm like, what the hell? Where did you get that? So
I didn't Google that.
It's interesting when.
But I didn't Google that. You were just you had raised something, and you were historically inaccurate. For 1,000 years, rulers were elected. It's not that I Googled it. It's just I have some knowledge on Rome and the aftermath of Rome and European history. And so you said something that was factually inaccurate, and I called you out on it. And here wait. Let me finish. You asked me a question about. Or you had made a statement about how, there being anarchy and that it didn't work, and that people got together and created a government. And that's not historically accurate. So I'm giving you one example. Other examples were, none of the colonies, when they became states, none of the people were ever given a choice on whether there was going to be a government or not. There's no historical reference that you can give that shows that government was done as an agreement and that the people actually wanted it. It's always been by conquest.
Exactly. And I've said this from the beginning. You could go as far back in history as you want to. World history is about conquest. That's all it's ever really been in terms of governments coming and going and ways of life coming and going. But when you go back to your obscure example of what happened in Boston or whatever you said, Massachusetts, once again, if it was such a great thing that it would have been able to withstand any of the wealthy landowners, it would have been able to withstand it, and it would have lasted more than a year if it was such a wonderful way of life. But can we move on to the next thing, please?
One last thing here. Why you seem to want to reduce an extreme, what I believe is an extremely complex societal issue, and you want to boil it down and simplify it to one particular, and there was a lot to it.
Okay.
To turn, I think you're just simplifying it, and you're excluding so many other like I brought up earlier, of issues that would go into something like that. How many people wanted to pick up guns and go against Americans? In fact, Americans that they were, or that they had worked with to actually get rid of the British authority in the entire state, of Massachusetts. Except for Boston. There's a lot more that goes into it.
Let's not oversimplify it, then. I agree with that. Let's go back to the beginning of time, the beginning of civilization. When I think anyone would agree that anarchy was probably the way we operated as human beings until we realized that it was not a practical way of life and governments began to emerge. I mean, anarchy was it's the natural, what do you want to call it? The natural state, I guess, of human beings. Everybody wanting to do things their own way, voluntarily, doing no harm, so forth and so on. But I think anyone would agree that anarchy, just by default, was the natural state of civilization for who knows how long. But then the necessity of some type of order began to slowly emerge. It went from despotic rulers and warlords to eventually maybe a little more civilized, where you got kings not necessarily chopping everybody's head off to get what they want, but then even that was a little bit too despotic, so they finally went into elected governments and so forth, and on until now we have, what I would even agree is overblown government. But there's not an oversimplification of why anarchy is nonsense.
No, you believe you don't believe that the concept of no rulers is nonsense. You think that the implementation of it is nonsense.
No. Let's make sure you understand what I'm saying. Rulers. I mean, you say rulers, I say leaders. Leaders are always going to emerge. Even if you want to call the society anarchistic in nature, leaders are always going to emerge naturally, and some people are going to resent it and call them rulers, which is a lot of what you do. You simply resent the fact that someone, some group, somewhere does have sway over your life and what you do. And anyway, that's I'm not oversimplifying the concept that we talked about. You do tend to use obscure examples of things.
Well,
they might be true. I'm not saying they're not.
That's a pretty big historical example. You're talking about getting rid of the entire British authority without firing a shot in the entire Massachusetts Bay Colony, with the exception of Boston. That is pretty significant. The fact that's not necessarily taught, yeah, there are reasons for that, but I am not an anarchist because I resent these people just because they have sway over my life. What I see is that I I am an anarchist because I want moral and ethical consistency. I resent that people impose themselves on the rest of society under the guise of protecting them. I resent the fact that they do business at the barrel of a gun. I resent the fact that they have a prison system and that they abuse us horribly. And I resent the fact that basic principles of right and wrong don't apply to some people because they call themselves a government. So I've laid out my position. And now, do you believe that government, as it operates, that it's a moral or ethical organization?
Not entirely. I would agree that it's outgrown a lot of its original intent, and it's become somewhat oppressive. But the thing that causes that, I believe anyway, is the simple fact that you've got 300 million people, or a nation the size of the United States, to have to deal with, and somebody's always going to be unhappy with whatever the government says. And I would also agree that the government has grown. I mean, I think it's absurd that you could break a law that you're not even aware of, that there's so many thousands of regulations and laws and statutes and whatever the hell else is out there, that you could actually break a law with no intent and not realize you're doing it and be in prison for it. Yeah, that's pretty overblown. But the thing is, you've got 300 million people to deal with here. You've got to have some kind of standards, laws, whatever you want to call them, and it's taken the form that it has. And that's just too bad. That's just the way it is. And I want to make sure that we stay on track with the simple fact that what you believe and what you're pushing in your ideology here will never, ever come to fruition, because it's nonsense and it's impractical. I want to make sure we come back to that.
Okay, you believe it's nonsense. I understand. I get that. But the question I had for you is, do you believe that governments, by the way they're supposed to operate, are they a moral, organization?
I think they start out as such, but there's layers and layers of government, and laws are made on top of laws, and then you get new leaders or rulers that come in and put their thumbprint on things. Maybe there should be a reset button, but with the type of government we have now, they try. They're not a bunch of evil, whatever you want to call them, that came from another planet. They're people like us. They were born here. They were raised in this society. I'm sure they had different upbringings in a lot of cases. I know a lot of them are only there because they're wealthy, so forth. All that type of stuff is in place. But I do not believe the government is some evil force trying to enslave us all. I don't believe that, and I think that's just not true.
Okay, but I am limited on time, so let's not get such a narrative when I'm trying to ask you a few questions here. So you think it was moral to start? So if I was to force strangers to give me money, would you consider me a criminal?
If you were doing that, yes, but that's not what's going on.
That is exactly what's going on. Don't they force strangers to give them money? The whole community to give them money?
Not in the sense that you're saying right now. Let me just explain. If I came up to you and said, "Give me some money," if I came up and robbed you, that's a crime. But when a group of people, the government and ostensibly the population who votes for a representative government like we have, establish, in this case, a taxation system, then ostensibly we've all agreed to it by electing the folks who enact it. And so indirectly we've agreed to this tax system. So it's not as you portray it.
Well, I'm gonna use what you mentioned and how you portray it, and I think that it contradicts with what you're trying to put forth in this narrative. You said it was always by conquest. So if it's by conquest,
world history, go back.
Yeah.
Go back as far as you want.
I'm not disputing that.
Conquest.
I'm not disputing you when you say it's always by conquest. I agree with you. I think the problem is you're trying to make a case that when people call themselves a government, that when they conquer somebody, that's moral.
Not at all. I don't think it's. I mean, it's not moral, but
not moral.
But it's not a matter of morality.
What?
It's how it is.
Well, you can be in the middle of beating someone half to death and say it's not moral, immoral. It's just it just is. I'm beating you half to death. It's not moral to conquer somebody. So if you conquer somebody and you start forcing them to give you money, is that somehow is it moral because you call yourself a government?
Well, I mean, when you characterize it like that, no, of course it's not. But that's not what happens.
Okay.
That's not what happens.
Wait.
The whole conquest.
But you said it's always by conquest. And so if it's by conquest, it's not by consent, right?
Well, of course not. If one country takes over another or whatever it is, of course it's not consensual.
Well, then if it's not consensual and it's by conquest, is it moral or is it immoral?
I'm just not sure that it's a question of morality. I mean, I guess you would have to say it's immoral.
Okay. Thank you. Well, it's immoral.
Let me finish my thought.
I'm sorry.
You'd have to say it's immoral by the morality that's emerged over time. But I mean, we're not talking about one person taking money off another person. We're talking about one nation taking over another after, warfare, whatever it is. I mean, it's just the way of the world. Morality, and let's not forget, morality is a construct of human beings. Morality doesn't exist in nature.
That's not true. That you're wrong about that, sir. Morality.
Animals are moral.
With people, with rational beings, because you have empathy, and morality comes from empathy, and you can measure empathy, and you know where in the brain that it's occurring. It's objective, and the morality comes from that empathy. And you're trying. It seems to be what you're trying to do, and if I'm wrong, you correct me. That you're trying to apply a different moral standard to a group as opposed to individuals that comprise the group.
No, not at all. I'm gonna stand on what I said a moment ago. There is no morality in nature. When you see when lions are hunting on a savanna, they don't pick out the strongest wildebeest they can find. They find the weakest one. And that's not fair. There is no fairness. There is no morality in nature. Civilization made up the concept of morality, what's right and what's wrong. But that's what makes us civilized. So I'm not totally disagreeing with you. I'm just saying that morality is subjective. I know you just said it wasn't, but I don't agree. I think morality is subjective, just like the concept of law is subjective, which actually brings me to a point. What you rail against is the concept of law. That's what you're really railing against. That's what you proselytize about, because the law is. The whole concept of law or even rules is totally subjective. It's made up. You know it as well as I do. I just say that it's necessary, and once a law is on the books, it's nothing unless you have enforcement. So I say that your whole thing really is against the concept of law itself.
No, I have no problem with moral laws or principles such as live honestly, injure no one, give every man his due. I just believe that principle of do no harm applies to everybody, and to say it's wrong that, and I I don't like your characterization that I'm proselytizing. So please, I have make a very strong point on the show that this is not religious, and that we don't rely on religious for morality. I already gave you my basis for most moral codes, and that's empathy. So it's not a religious thing, and I don't rely on any religion or God or concept or anything like that to support my concept of morality and do no harm. And it's something, because of empathy, we do learn by the time we're 4 or 5 years old. And even if it's
That's
just
not what the word means.
I'm sorry?
That's not what the word means. Proselytizing can be pushing forth any concept. It doesn't. I didn't mean it in a religious sense.
Okay.
You're pushing your idea, and you're espousing it to others. Anyway. You know what I mean. So,
okay, but hey, see, you say it's my idea. The principle of do no harm is not my idea. It's something that is shared by most people. And even if you look at a principle of just self-preservation, people, not that it's not necessarily always religious, but do unto others, to treat others the way you want to be treated, or don't do to people what you don't want done to you. It's just out of self-preservation.
Where's the evidence for that? Where's the evidence for do no harm? Where's the evidence?
It has to do with empathy, that it bothers us. Some of us, anyway.
Mark,
you're interrupting me.
Direct answer.
I'm giving it.
You're asking, where's the evidence?
I'm trying to give that to you. You interrupted me. And I only have like a minute left. Most people, even animals, have empathy. And it's from the fact that it hurts us to see other people get hurt. That's where our moral codes have come from not wanting to see other people, including ourselves, get hurt, because it hurts us. That's what and empathy is something that you can measure. Like I said, it's not something I'm making up. You can see the part of the brain that lights up when we're having empathy for either another person or an animal. So it's not. It's not like a religious thing where it's kind of a subjective, where they say that it's immoral to be a homosexual, or it's immoral.
I'm asking you where the evidence is. I'm asking you where the evidence of that is. Where is it?
I've said it comes from our empathy, which we can measure on I can't remember the kind of scan. That is the basis of moral codes.
I'm asking you where the evidence for do no harm is, specifically that thing you call a natural law, whatever you call it. Where's the evidence for that specific thing?
I'm telling you, I believe it comes from.
There can't be evidence for it because it is a subjective thing. There can't be evidence that laws apply to someone because laws are subjective things. Your theories are all wet. And people that believe them simply because they want to. And that is the principle on which this whole thing hinges. You and your equivocation, which is a common tactic of yours. Equivocation is what you use all the time.
Okay.
And let's also not forget. Just state your assertions as a question, as spoken by you in a video that I sent you the link to, direct quote from you. Just state your assertions as a question.
Well, actually, completely out of time. I'm not even on the live LRN broadcast anymore, so we went a little over. And
you're lucky, man.
I'm lucky. Well, ICBM, I mean, I could just sit here and address, the things that you're saying. You want to believe. Here's an example of something that you just accused me of. You believe that anarchy is impractical and will absolutely never happen. And for some reason, you want to believe that that's true. I mean, but the people believe what I talk about on the show, because not only does it withstand critical analysis, but there are people that have replicated the results. I have had people call the show, and I have documents on the website to prove that not only have I had success defeating tickets and drug cases and tax cases, but people have replicated that. And people can go to markstevens.net and they can see where people have replicated my success and other successes. And then we can walk people through the process. That's why people believe. Now, if you want to reject the evidence, like Misty and Juan Galt, and you want to piss on a motion to dismiss that was actually granted and say that it was absolute anything other than what Mark said it was, you can do that. But then to turn around and to say and generalize and say that the only reason why people believe what I'm talking about is because they want to believe, that is just flat out wrong. I present more than enough evidence to support what I'm doing, and the fact is, people have replicated the results. So it is a solid body of evidence at markstevens.net that flies in the face of what you're trying to put over on the show here.
I've looked at your evidence. I've looked at it as much as I can, and one thing I noticed is there is almost never the complete decision by the judge as to why he did or he or she did what they did. And you have stated in video yourself that most of the traffic cases that you win are because a cop doesn't show up. And I know that to be a fact myself. There's all kinds of reasons why cases get thrown out. I'm going to keep calling it an ideology because that's the easiest word to come up with. But your ideology is just a ploy to get a little business going for yourself. And if you look around you, there's this Van Valian too, or whoever it is, and he's absolutely destroying the whole sovereign citizen thing. And you say you're not a sovereign citizen. I know you say that all the time, but you walk like one, you talk like one, so you're probably one.
Come on.
And
no. All right, look, I'm out of time. I appreciate the call. It's been a decent conversation, but now you're going now, and I'm not going to take the time or to keep addressing these issues that you have. So I'm going to have to let you go. I do appreciate the call. You are welcome to call again. I'm going to drop off the caller line. Anybody who watches the show knows that this is not a money-making thing. I am plagued with tech issues. I can't believe I was even able to do the show on a stream today. The acoustics in this room, as you can see, are absolutely dreadful. This is not a money-making thing. I can't even go to Libertopia next week because I don't have any money. So this is what people want to do. Is they want to look, and I'm not saying that there are no other explanations for the ones that I give. So if you watch the videos when I talk about something getting kicked out, most of the time, depending on what I have, I will say that there are other explanations. This is the most likely one. And I think that that's the honest approach to take. But people like ICBM and Juan Galt and the other attorneys that like to piss on my work, what they want to do is dishonest. What they want to do is say, not only is Mark wrong, but the only explanation is mine. And so, yeah, you want to use some critical analysis here. You want to use some critical thinking skills. Why is somebody saying that there's one and only explanation for something when there is circumstantial or even direct evidence that says to the contrary? When a motion to dismiss that I wrote was signed, was granted, and like the Wisconsin one, and it is granted, you can say an explanation for that is the judge was furious with the prosecutor, and he was trying to send him a message. The problem is that the evidence flies in the face of that, and it's not the only explanation. Another explanation is the judge would not have ordered a response to a motion that is gobbledygook, that is legalistic gibberish. Judges don't do that. The judges will sua sponte, just deny the motion without explanation because they do it all the time. And if you have to assume, see, there's no circumstantial evidence at all to support the claim that the judge was just pissed off. You have to inject that. You have to make an assumption. Occam's razor, basic principles of reason and logic dictate if you're making an assumption. I'm using deductive reasoning based on the evidence. They are trying to use inductive reasoning and make assumptions based on their experience. And you have to go by the evidence. The direct evidence is what matters, not your, well, I was a prosecutor and judges would get pissed off and deny something. Really? They're going to throw out a case with that has merit just because the judge is pissed off at you? No, you have to go by the direct evidence. And just like with the IRS, we have a form letter that states when they threw the 6 years out, based on the information you provided, we have determined that there's no obligation to file. And you have to, and I provide the documentation, and they had financial information. They had all the bank records. So despite having the bank records, they still determined that there was no obligation, and he threw it out. So, this is, people believe what I talk about because it passes logical analysis. I'm not using straw man. I'm not cherry picking. And damn it, I have gone on the show and on record, I have debunked this Freeman sovereign citizen garbage dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of times. Every time it tends to come up, I debunk it. So to turn around and say that I'm not really an anarchist, I'm a Freeman, no, you're wrong. I'm not. This is not a front that I'm putting on. I'm not a sovereign citizen. I'm not a sovereign, and I'm certainly not a Freeman type. I don't get into this commercial redemption garbage. No, I don't believe that the birth certificate is a bond. I don't believe any of that stuff because I got to see the friggin' proof. So, I think you failed here. We agree that it's always by conquest. It's immoral from beginning to end. And will it always be in place? Yeah, it's very possible. Could it be a pipe dream that we'll ever get to a voluntary society? Sure. Yeah, of course it's possible, because only an idiot would say that one way or the other is absolutely certain. Only somebody who's looking at it from a closed mind will say that there's one and only one explanation. So yeah, I of course I accept the possibility. Of course I accept the possibility we're never going to have a voluntary society. Of course. And I absolutely understand what we're up against. We're up against people like you who won't use critical analysis. People who you think it's happened before. You would have been the guy in 1864 saying, if freeing the slaves was such a great idea, why it's been around for 8,000 years. For all of recorded history, we've had slavery. If it was such a good idea, they would have done it already. That's not an argument. That's no proof that the concept is invalid. You agree that it's always by conquest, it's immoral, and you're going to piss on somebody's work on trying to inform people and bring out and expose them for the crooks that they are. That's why I'm glad we did the Anarchist versus Statist to show just how immoral these people really are. And so what I want to do, I want to end the show with this. Let me play this one more time on the big broadcast. So this is the first part of the first edition of Anarchist versus a Statist, and see who the one who really is rational and who's not irrational. So let's play that. Ask you, since I have you on the lines, like, look, if as your organization, the state government, and I forced strangers to give me money, would you consider me a criminal?
Good one. Anything else, sir?
Just a yes or no, yeah.
All right, and obviously I'm not going to answer this, sir.
Why?
Wait, what does it have to do with? I mean, there's
really
nothing to do with, yeah.
Really?
So I'm not going to entertain those type of questions.
So because you would consider me a criminal for doing exactly what your agency is doing, wouldn't you? That's why you don't want to say it. I understand it's tough. That's how you make a living. You're very heavily invested in this system, and you don't want to answer a question that whose obvious answer, really indicts the organization that you're working for. I get it, but humor me. Just yes or no.
Sir, I mean, that's your belief, and you have the right to that. So, I mean, again, I'm not going to entertain that question or answer that for your satisfaction when it's irrelevant to your client's account or the situations.
We're not talking about my client's account. I'm just talking to you as I'm a member of the media, and you are part of the. And I asked you a direct question that just yes or no. If you don't, look, you could just say yes or no, and then we can move on. But I think I should have an answer to the question.
Again, sir, I'm not going to answer that question.
Because I am a criminal if I force strangers to give me money. And what does that say about the moral basis of how your organization operates?
All right, sir. So I'm going to forward on this message. If you had anything else for me, I'll note that down. Otherwise,
that was quite a pause that we had there. A lot of pauses that you had with these people. So, one goal, you agree it's always by conquest, that it's immoral, but you'll go ahead and you just, anybody who wants to bring this, to light, they're just scammers who are just trying to make money. All right. We've gone way over, but good material for today. And I will be doing more, of course, of the Anarchist versus Statist, which scoring right now, it's 1-0. And of course, I guess I could add one goal to that. He is definitely a statist, and he admits that it is immoral. So at least we got that much done, and it's always by conquest. And that's what you do. You're talking, and so when Misty and Juan, and you start talking about these people, you completely want to ignore from the equation when we're discussing it that these people are not honorable. They're crooks, and to have such support and to try to give credibility to what they're saying and what they're doing, you're starting off on the wrong foot. And if anyone thinks that they're a moral organization, produce your evidence. Because if I'm a crook for forcing strangers to give me money, guess what? And you notice this guy didn't want to entertain any answer because he knew damn well he was not getting out of that. If I'm a crook, it follows. There's a problem with using logic. And yeah, I'm going to use logic and reason to expose these crooks, and I'm not going to just limit myself to legal logic. So if you want to defeat these people, if you want to, effectively control the damage that they want to cause you, challenge them effectively, use the Socratic method, ask them questions, bring out the contradictions, and annihilate their position. Yeah, my name is Mark Stevens. Been the No State Project for April 28th, 2018. I will be live on Wednesday and maybe have a live stream on Tuesday afternoon. So So this way, if we do that, you will have notification. And so till then, salud.